Hello and welcome back to another episode of the People's Wrestling Podcast. As always, joined by Ali and Matt. Guys, how are we doing? It's been a little while since our last episode.
Been a while, yeah. Been a while.
So much so, it stressed Matt out to the point of beard loss.
Yeah, less said about that, the better.
Is that why your camera's a bit low?
Yeah, I'm not happy.
It's a necessary evil.
Makes you look about 15 years younger, man, so that's good.
I don't like it.
Yeah, these things happen, but, you know, we bounce back. We go again, as the footballers say. Right, so we're going to crack on with this one quite quickly because, as I'm sure all of you are aware, this past weekend, we saw WrestleMania 37, number 37. That's a lot of WrestleManias, but it's only the second one that we've had. That was 2 nights. So first off, before we kind of get into the matches and stuff, we briefly touched on it in the episode we did prior to Mania about the concept and idea of 2-night episodes. But how do we think the 2-night format played out in the end for this particular WrestleMania?
Well, I thought it was the perfect WrestleMania to do it for, and I personally really enjoyed the 2-night format. I don't really want to go back to one night. I think it worked really, really well, because I feel like the danger. What we had last year was that they had 2 nights, so they had a lot of matches to put on with no crowd, obviously. So they ended up just throwing random ones on. I think Natalia Liv Morgan was a match that they had, and it was sort of like, well.
And a few matches that had to be kind of changed last minute due to people not being available. Big matches.
Yeah, but so it felt like there was just a lot of throwaway matches. This year, it didn't feel like there were any throwaway matches. I think they had 7 matches each on each night.
Something like a decent amount.
I feel like that's a good amount to be putting on.
Yeah, 7 each.
And yeah, I think it worked really well.
Matt, what say you?
I'm not a fan of it. I don't know why, but I would rather there be less matches, more storytelling, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I feel like
perhaps give each match a bit more longer.
Yeah, they're throwing a bit too much at it.
Tag Team Turmoil, for example, could have been done on SmackDown or Raw.
Bit of a clusterfuck.
But yeah, I'm sure we'll get to that. Yeah, I'm personally a bit torn on the 2-night format. I think it can work, and like Ali said, this was probably the best WrestleMania to do it in front of fans. From a fan's perspective, I'm sure it's good for energy levels because the show's a bit shorter. It's about half the time that we were there for. So yeah, you'll be able to keep your energy all the way throughout. But also from the downside, you might have some people who can only get a ticket to one night, and with the matches not being announced and the matches on specific nights not being announced, that could cause a bit of an issue because you might not then get to actually see the match or the person that you came really to see.
Well, it's definitely going back to one night next year, isn't it?
I believe
so. Yeah, but I'm sure it's potentially something they'll either have to revisit it or they're going to have to shorten Mania, one of the two, because I think 95%, if not more, of people will agree that the 7-8 hour Manias are far too long, especially without an hour break in the middle.
You're pushing 5 hours is your maximum that you can get away with, I think.
Yeah, and I think I suppose that was one of the good things that came out of Saudi Arabia shows, for example, was the hour break the half-hour break in the middle for their prayer time. Having an intermission when you've got an all-day show like we had would definitely have helped.
Start it earlier, have an intermission, and then you've not got to tire everybody out before the main event.
Exactly. For 35, the main event went on after midnight. That's when you know it's a bit late. And
it definitely lacked from the crowd not being involved because they were too tired.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I basically fell asleep during the main
You were
event.
very drunk.
I sobered up by that point, but I was just so tired and cold.
Aidan was nearly on hangover point like that.
I was freezing my tits off.
Hey, you were very cold. I was cold and I had a coat.
Well, speaking of coats, they would have come in handy for the live crowd at WrestleMania. First time, we should say, in 1 year, 1 month, and 1 day, that crowd, not full attendance, but a large crowd was at a WWE event since March last year. How did that make you feel, and what did you think of the crowd over the course of the weekend? Did it do anything for you? Did it make you realise how much you missed it? Or I think that's been the general consensus.
I haven't watched a Raw or a SmackDown in over a year because no fans. I just don't like the concept of people being on screens and like fake noise being put into it doesn't do anything for me. And to have a live crowd back, you could see the superstars were all like, right, we're all up for this, let's do this.
Yeah, and some more so than others. I'm just replugging in my camera because it's being a twat. Some more so than others. I really felt like it wasn't until they started putting like NXT roster in the crowd at the Performance Center, and then moving to the Thunderdome with the piped-in noise, where you realised just how deadly silent it was this time last year at WrestleMania. So when they go back and they show replays and show clips of it, it's very strange to watch that for a couple of months we just watch wrestling, or at least a month or so, we watch wrestling in silence, basically.
I definitely felt sorry for the likes of Drew McIntyre, who won.
Yeah.
Your WrestleMania moment's gone. Like,
and then,
it's not a WrestleMania moment, it's just a moment.
And I was very, I was surprised at the start of the show on Saturday when they're all out on the stage, which was a very cool visual, and having Vince McMahon do the introduction to it, basically. I was surprised that it it gave me chills in a way, just to see the crowd back, and just hearing that, like, basically we're back open for business in a way, which is basically what the tagline going into it was.
Again.
Yeah, and my favourite thing about the crowd really throughout the entire weekend was I feel like it would have been very easy for them, especially as a wrestling crowd, because a lot of crowds did it, to kind of try and make the show about them, start like a "We Are Awesome" chant or something like that. Something's just annoying.
I'll have you know that I've won a Slammy Award for doing that, so fuck you.
Yeah, well, you could put that up on your shelf that behind you.
We were awesome. That night, yeah. We were awesome.
But I thought the crowd at the weekend were very good. They seemed to, I don't know if it's just that that want and need to just be involved in watching wrestling, but they seem to really just lose themselves in the kind of stories, not trying to boo the good guys and cheer the bad guys or whatever. For the most part, they just kind of went along with what they're being told to cheer and boo, really. I didn't like that there was still piped in noise, but I understand it with an open stadium that was only like a third full, if that. The sound coming from it probably wasn't that great. It would easily get lost, so I understand why they did it, but it would have been nice just purely to hear the crowd.
Yeah, let's just say I think I can understand why they did that. Just going back to the very beginning part of, post rain delay, with the Vince and the superstars on the stage. I think, when you're properly excited for a WrestleMania, like, I've been many times in my life. Probably the last two, I haven't particularly been massively excited about WrestleMania starting. It's just kind of been something that I'm like, okay, well, I have to watch it because I have to.
You were there at one of them.
Well,
Or are you talking about
I'm talking about last year.
This and
this
last.
year.
Oh,
And I've really felt like that was a moment which pumped me up. I don't get pumped up massively anyway. I'm British, but like it was like a moment with Vince and the superstars there, and I wasn't, the national anthem thing, guys, is by the by for me. I'm not American, so it doesn't really do anything for me. But with the jets flying over and the pyro and Vince there and his welcome to WrestleMania, it was a really cool moment. With
and the roar of the crowd.
Yeah, you can feel the energy.
Even Rhea Ripley crying made me a bit like, whoa, this is what it's all about.
Yeah, you could see in a lot of their faces, some just looked like, some were just beaming with kind of pride in a way, and excitement. Others were kind of, others that were kind of in their characters, perhaps. But yeah, very palpable emotions throughout the weekend, really, but especially that opening segment, which, not to rain on their parade, but there was rain on the parade at the first night of WrestleMania, at least. And I can't believe that after the 14, I think since 2007, 2008 being the first one in a while, there's been so many outdoor manias. There's only been like four or five indoor ones in that time, so there's been more outdoors. And that's the first rain delay we've ever had. How is that? Like, I know they've been to, they go to usually up Florida or wherever, but they've done New York in April and New Jersey in April and stuff like that. And I just don't understand how it's never happened.
Imagine how pissed off we would have been if it was that cold and raining in New York when we were there.
Well, it rained immediately as we left.
Yeah.
Could you imagine? Not only did it rain, it fucking hammered it down. So could you imagine if that had arrived 2 hours earlier?
Yeah, exactly. It would have considered going home.
I think I was asleep.
Yeah.
Remember, it was.
You don't remember walking around the whole of the stadium in the pouring rain?
I remember really needing a piss and then just going into this
Portaloo.
Yeah, we walked around the entire stadium, and while we were doing that, it was raining. But literally, we finally found our Uber or cab. And literally, like as we got in and sat down, it just went like everywhere. It was ridiculous. It was very heavy. But yeah, we ended up with about half an hour or so rain delay, which I actually thought was very interesting to see how they handled it, because obviously they would have been aware of it in the hours leading up to it. The Raymond James Stadium account was tweeting it around on Twitter and stuff, and it had been rumored throughout the day that there was a storm. So they obviously would have been aware. So I wonder if they had plans for content in this kind of delay period. And it ended up being, I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall backstage, because I feel like it would have been frantic as fuck. But we ended up getting a lot of what seemed to be unscripted and for the large part mostly improvised promos from a number of performers, likes of Kevin Owens, Drew McIntyre, Bobby Lashley, Bianca Belair was there. We've got quite a few, and for the most part they were pretty good and pretty interesting. And I think, if I would imagine that at least some of the higher ups, maybe not at the time, because I'm sure there would have been like a shit ton going on, but I feel like some of the higher ups would be looking at who is taking this time where perhaps they're not being told exactly what to say, and who did the best, and who can maybe be given that freedom in the future.
Yeah, I feel like it was it was a good, almost like a test. I mean, I think they played it safe with most of the people that they put on camera with it. So, I mean, if you're going to go to Kevin Owens, he's going to give you a really good, from the heart, unscripted promo. If you go to New Day, for instance, that they're just going to mess around for 5 minutes and it's going to be funny, I felt like there were some others which were a little bit of a surprise choice, like Bianca Belair. Like, she's good, but she doesn't have a lot to say. She only got a lot of experience in those situations, and she came across really well as well. And even Braun, like, to a certain extent, Braun's not the greatest on the mic. His promos are all very similar. But he had to improvise as well, so that was good to see. So I feel like it was a bit like because they didn't have. I mean, they had Drew McIntyre on there with Bobby Lashley and MVP, but they didn't have the big stars.
But even the Drew McIntyre and Bobby Lashley's kind of altercation with each other, where they essentially had to split up a fight between the two of them. Whether that was planned or not, I don't know. But it's just those kind of things where I think, that's just good wrestler thinking. I think because they could have gone out there and been like, it's a shame about the rain delay. We would have loved to have been out there with the fans and whatever. But no, you had like guys like Bobby Lashley and Drew McIntyre where they were like, I don't give a fuck. We'll fight right now in the back. Like, let's just get on with it. I thought Seth Rollins had a good little fun interaction with the new Irish guy, Kevin, I think. The only thing I didn't like about this rain delay was I think that would have been the perfect opportunity to get a quick interview of Sami Zayn. Or Sami Zayn hijacking an interview and be like, this is a conspiracy, see? Like, they're trying to stop me having a WrestleMania match. Just have him go off on one for 5 whole minutes. And then to cut him off while he's mid-rant as well, to escalate things even further. I think that would have been top-tier content.
It would have been a good idea.
Anything involving Sami at the moment is top-tier content, in my opinion.
Yeah, that would have been cool.
That's always been your opinion.
Huh?
I said that's always been your opinion. You're very much a Sami mark.
I've always loved Sami Zayn from his NXT run, and I was always one of the people who thought I can't see him as a heel. When he first turned heel, I was like, he's such a baby face. I don't think it's going to work, and it worked so good. He's just he didn't even have to change that much. Like he came out the same music, doing the same entrance, but now that he's a heel, you find it's actually really annoying. But yeah, Sami Zayn at the moment I think is doing some of the best stuff he's done on the main roster.
Should we get into the card because we've got a lot to get through?
Yeah, that's just what I was about to do. So speaking of Bobby Lashley and Drew McIntyre, they opened the show. So calls for them to, or they originally kept saying that this would be a WrestleMania main event, which I'm assuming would be night 1 of WrestleMania, which subsequently got switched out for Sasha and Bianca. So this one went on first, which I guess is kind of apt, seeing as Drew McIntyre has always maintained that he wanted to be the first one out when the crowds are first back. Technically wasn't, because we got Titus O'Neil and Hulk Hogan at the start and all these others, but
that was the anticlimax for me, because I'd read a lot about that Drew wanted to be the first out, and then they did the thing with Vince, and I was like, okay, well that makes sense, that's good. And then there was, then the Titus
O'Neil coming out.
Just like, that's not what people want to see.
I just don't get the WrestleMania hosts. Yeah, I don't get the point for WrestleMania hosts. Like, I mean, it was. We never used to have it. Why do we have it now?
Alexa Bliss did it when we were there, and that was all right. Like, we would have rather seen her in a match, I'm sure. We had the moment with Hulk Hogan coming out, and a few little interactions through the night, but there's nothing. They don't do anything.
Yeah.
I knew they did a pretty good job when they were hosts, but again, would have rather them have been in scheduled matches. So yeah, I just don't really understand it. But it took away from, in my eyes, it slightly took away from the entrances, because it was just a bit like, we didn't need that little distraction. And then maybe part of me felt like, are they just waiting for another 5 minutes to see if the rain's going to come back, or like, are they good to go now? But then when the entrances did happen, you kind of forget about all that anyway, and I think the crowd reacted pretty well. So
yeah, WrestleMania hosts, I don't think I'll ever be a fan of. They don't do anything. They don't add anything. It's just a reason to get Hulk Hogan on a show in 2021, which I don't think anyone other than Hulk Hogan really wants.
No.
Jimmy Hart, obviously. So yeah, they started the show, and I thought it was a good match. I saw a few people say I was a bit disappointing for like a WrestleMania opener, but I thought it was probably about as good a match as you're going to get from Bobby Lashley and Drew McIntyre. Very physical and hard hitting. It was just a shame for me that after an entire year of Drew McIntyre not being a stupid babyface, he gets tricked by MVP shouting his name.
Yeah. I think it was a very. You're right. Drew's been sort of very switched on as a babyface, isn't he, for the whole time? And it's very un-Drew-like for him to be beaten by something like that.
Yeah.
Which I guess maybe they could make a story out of. But yeah, it felt a little bit. At the time, I haven't watched this match back. I haven't watched any of it back actually. But watching it live, I remember thinking after the match, I felt a little bit disappointed in it. I think that's probably harsh. I think, as you say, you probably got what you expect out of a Drew versus Bobby Lashley match. It didn't feel as brutal as I felt it could be.
Do you reckon you were disappointed in the match?
A lot more brutality.
Do you reckon you were disappointed more in the match or the finish, which made the match seem worse?
Probably the match.
Mick Foley, for example, I saw him at the time tweet out and said, your babyface passes out to a fucking full Nelson in a WWE title match, the first match back at Mania. Like, really? And I kind of understand it to an extent. I also understand why they did it in story, have him pass out and not tap and all that stuff in a way to make Bobby Lashley win without completely just flattening Drew McIntyre's momentum in a way. But yeah, a lot of people I saw weren't happy with how the match actually ended itself, rather than perhaps the match content.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think I didn't expect. I think I said to, because Frankie was actually watching with me, which is an absolute miracle that I managed to convince her to get to do that. But I think it might have been because I was really hoping for like a really good opener, just to be like, see, this is really good. You should watch more of it. But it kind of just felt a little bit short for me. But then when I think about it, I think actually it was a perfectly fine match, and it did what it needed to do. Bobby Lashley went over, which is fine. The only criticism I would have had at the finish, obviously apart from Drew being stupid, was that I felt like the Hurt Lock wasn't in for very long before he passed out.
No, it could have been like Shawn Michaels and Kurt Angle at WrestleMania, where I was like in for about 3 or 4 minutes, and he was doing literally everything possible to get out of it.
Yeah, I just think time delays were they were trying to hit that was one of the criticisms I had of the WrestleMania. You could see they were trying to hit times. Like, they weren't ever going to go more than 10, 15 minutes.
There's a thing I remember seeing at the time that because whenever they do these outdoor WrestleManias, especially, I don't know if it's the same for indoors, but they have agreements with the councils, I guess, of the city they're in about when they're going to finish, because it's late at night and they've got noise and all that kind of stuff. And I remember seeing that I think they had up until midnight or something, and it would have been it was touch and go basically. But Ali, you say it felt short, but really it was the longest match of night one.
It was the second longest match of the weekend. I don't think the match felt short. I just think I wish he was in the Hurt Lock longer, because for me, Drew McIntyre is like the most viable challenger to Bobby Lashley, but he met exactly the same fate, if not worse, than every other person that Bobby Lashley's beaten over the last 6 months. You know, like it didn't feel like Drew was tougher for toughing it out a bit longer than anybody else. And I feel like what you want from your babyface challenger is to be like, so close but not quite there. And I felt like maybe if he'd broken out of it and then got locked back in it straight away or something like that might help.
Or passed out while like an inch away from the rope, like reaching, and his hand just drops, or something like maybe perhaps something a bit more visual than just having Bobby Lashley kind of sit on top of him. But yeah, Bobby Lashley retains, which I was surprised by, but not necessarily that disappointed, because I do like Drew, but at the same time, it would have been a bit of a shame for Bobby Lashley just to cut him off short at a 1 month reign. So interesting to see where they go, I think. Won't spend too much time on this one because it was a bit of a clusterfuck, but the tag team turmoil for the women's tag team championships went down. 5 teams, 10 women.
So did their clothes.
Won't touch on that too much, but it was just very strange. Obviously, like, it was one of those matches where it didn't need to take place at Mania. It's designed to get as many people on Mania as possible. I'm annoyed. I wanted the Riot Squad to win, mainly because they're the only people in that match who've been a team longer than 6 months. With Dana and Mandy being the other longest ones, and it's a symptom of their whole women's tag division.
Tag team, isn't it?
Yeah,
I'll just throw 2 people together and that'll work.
But tag teams, but women's tag teams especially, they just seem to. If you are an established women's tag team, you are getting nowhere near those fucking titles. Oh, you two have just put yourselves together this week? Yeah, you can have a title match. Like, this just seems to be how it goes with these titles. I don't understand it. I don't get it.
They won it and then did fuck all with it. And you're like, they're an actual tag team.
Yeah. The only tag teams you really have officially, not officially, but like who you would say, yeah, they're a tag team, are Riot Squad. I still don't really consider Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler a tag team.
But this is what I've said. Why even have them titles? Why even have that?
I don't. Yeah, I was all for it at the start because I thought they're going to make more out of this. I'm going to make some teams and maybe they'll call some people up from NXT to help fill it. And it just hasn't worked out at all. It just seems like next to 24/7 Championship, it's the least thought about title from a creative perspective, and it is a shame because they made out as if they were doing the world a favour by adding it, and they haven't cared about them since. So I don't know, but in the end, the Talia and Tamina won.
Why add a title if you're just gonna not even? I don't even think the women's roster is big enough for 2 champions, if I'm going to be honest.
I think
it probably is, but yeah, the tag title situation, this definitely isn't big enough for that. I mean, you'd have to expand the NXT women's roster considerably, and then use them on Raw and SmackDown, or at least have the champions go more regularly to NXT.
Over the year and a bit that they've had the titles, they went to NXT, about 3 times?
I think it's 3 times, yeah.
And now NXT have their own women's tag team titles.
Yeah. So yeah, I definitely don't think that the amount of women on the roster throughout the whole company is big enough for 2 women's tag teams championship title belts, or titles.
Yeah. Two singles women's tags, I think, is fine. Because you split them across both shows, and especially if you didn't have the women's tag team ones, because there's a women's tag team's title, if they are feuding with anyone, that takes up 4 whole women potentially across both brands. My fucking camera is pissing me off. Sorry if anyone's watching the video, not that anyone really does, but so yeah, it's need to address and something they need to fix.
To be honest, they have the same problem in the men's tag team division as well. It's not just a women's tag team problem.
Yeah. I 100% agree with the tag team there should just be 1 tag title.
And I think going back to the match, I think the probably the most memorable part of it was Mandy Rose falling over before it, and that probably tells you everything you need to know about the match. It was a bit of a cluster.
I knew WWE was going to do what they did on Raw. I don't know if you've watched it, but it's going to become a thing if it hasn't already. It's so typical.
What happened to Raw?
Basically, Nia Jax slipped getting into the ring after making fun of making fun of Mandy about it, and then this was the weirdest thing during the match. She got knocked to the outside. So Nia went to get back into the ring. She got back. She stepped back on the thing and then slipped and fell back out. And Dana and Mandy were laughing at her, and she got really angry. So she got back into the ring. Dana and Mandy left the ring and just walked off. They were like, "Nah, not worth it," and got counted out.
It was really bad.
She was in the ring raging, and they were just like, "Yeah, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. Leave it." And it was like, why the fuck should we care about wrestlers winning and losing if they literally don't care about winning and losing? Like, at least have Nia Jax get counted out because of it, and they at least win the match. But it was just so weird and shit. It was really bad.
Yeah, the match at Mania it felt like it was rushed. It felt like they went, oh, we had 10 minutes, well, now you've got 6. So do everything you needed to do. I don't know how long it went in the end. It probably went a bit longer.
14.
It went 14 minutes, right? Well, it felt like they were like, okay, you have 20. Oh, actually, now you've got 15. So, cut 5 minutes of action now. And that's when probably what I think most people were expecting was that Naomi and Lana would go quite far, and then they went after like a minute.
Yeah,
and
the first out.
Do you know what seriously annoys me? How can Tamina not do a splash?
I know. She's got the worst splash in the business. I've
I
always
pressed
said that she can't do. It's the one thing that anyone. It's the one thing that people like associate with Tamina, other than. I tweeted this out last week, but 90% of Tamina and Nia Jax matches are them walking up to another larger woman, and the commentators being, "Oh, this is going to be good," and it never is. It's just not. And then on SmackDown, we got Tamina versus Nia Jax. I was like, oh, for fuck, they're not even going to wrestle. They're just going to stare at each other. But yeah, anyway, moving on. Natalya and Tamina picking up the win. What was a good watch, but was, I thought, disappointingly short. Could have maybe cut some time off the previous match, was Cesaro versus Seth Rollins in Cesaro's one-on-one WrestleMania debut, which is mental when he's been there 10 years now.
Firstly, mental that he's been there 10 years, but secondly, mental that this was his first singles match. Again, I agree, a little bit shorter than I would have hoped, but it was fun to watch. It was a fun watch. It just felt, so this was a match which, in my eyes, felt a little bit. I know they've been feuding for a few weeks now, and Cesaro's sort of been on this upward curve, but this felt a little bit throwaway. It felt like you just need to get Seth Rollins on the show, so find him someone to face a little bit.
Yeah,
it's like, Seth, who do you want to face at Mania?
That's what it felt like. Yeah. Oh, you've come back, Seth. Thanks for that. What do you want to do at Mania? Oh no, I'll have my mate Cesaro. It's kind of what it felt like, and it's cool because they put on a really good match, and we haven't seen it particularly often, if ever. I don't know.
The last singles match was apparently 2014.
So yeah, for a long time. So it felt fresh, and it was a good match. But again, it felt a little bit short. But it did what it needed to do. It got Cesaro, a good win at WrestleMania. Seth doesn't need it, so yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, I think it could have been one of those where perhaps it could have been the main event or something a bit more elevated and get a bit more time at another pay-per-view. But it's still good enough for a Mania match, I think. It was similar to Kevin and Sammy on night 2, and I think they didn't have a lot of time, so they just went, fuck it, let's just go out and do shit. Because it started off very fast.
You can just tell when people are naturally comfortable with each other in the ring.
Yeah, it was like, it felt short, but I think although it was 11 and a bit minutes, it only felt really short because I wanted to see more. Whereas
it's because we know they're both capable of way, way more.
And it doesn't necessarily, I think with the way it's ended, it doesn't necessarily have to be the end of the story. It could just kind of be a middle of the road point. I mean, maybe get something more at Backlash, for example. But yeah,
WrestleMania Backlash. Thank you.
WrestleMania Backlash. Sorry.
Or give it its full name.
Yeah, that's another one of those WWE things that annoys me about the wording of things, or how it always has to be like Braun on Raw was like, and as you saw, I defeated Shane McMahon inside of a steel cage at WrestleMania on Saturday night. And it's just like, whatever fucking talks like that. It's just too many words. A man of not too many words, Omos, makes his WWE debut, in-ring debut anyway, wins the Raw Tag Team Championships off the New Day alongside AJ Styles.
I thought the New Day put him over so much. They made him look like an absolute stunner.
Yeah, I think the story of the match, in a way, it was almost kind of like AJ was the baby face in trying to get the hot tag, but it was done in a way because you know that Omos is such a big threat. And my favorite thing about the match was the commentator. I think it was Samoa Joe. While they had AJ in the corner, he said something like, "Oh, you could see they're very smart. They've been cutting off the ring this entire match." And as he was saying that to the camera, Xavier Wood was like, "And as you can see, we're effectively cutting off the ring. We're very smart." It's just stuff like that they do that always made me laugh. Just these little ad libs. Yeah, like you said, the minute Omos got in, it was game over. It was only about another 2 minutes after that, but he is a fucking huge man. Wrestling in a strange attire, I would admit.
It's very Deacon
A button-up
Batista.
lycra vest. But, it was like he had WrestleMania at 8 and dinner plans at 9, something like that, I don't know, but got the win. AJ's now Grand Slam champion.
Like, what can he do?
In ring?
Yeah, I get what they're trying to do with him. But is he going to be that good if he's on his own?
Seems to move quite well. The question will be who wins it off them, and then how does it go from there in terms of his relationship with AJ? Because I'm assuming that when they lose the titles, it'll be AJ who takes the pin. So it'll be interesting to see where they go with it. I'm glad they finally got him wrestling, because it makes sense after all these months of him being AJ's manager that you back him up as a teammate, for example. So, interested to see where they go. I'm not too, although I love the New Day, I'm not too displeased about them losing the titles, because I'm sure they'll get them again in another couple months anyway. So,
I mean, they're 11-time champs, right? So they'll be on their 12th probably in approximately 3 months' time.
Exactly. So,
if not Backlash.
At WrestleMania Backlash.
WrestleMania Backlash, yeah.
So we'll move on to the final 3 matches of night 1. I don't have too much to say about this one, to be honest. Braun Strowman versus Shane McMahon in the steel cage match.
I can give you a few words about it. Terrible build, decent match. That's what I thought.
I enjoyed the match.
I don't know why Michael Cole reacted to Shane being thrown off the cage to the mat as if it was the most damnedest thing he'd ever seen in his life.
Yeah. I mean,
don't get me wrong. Shane McMahon, that was quite tame.
Yeah.
Exactly. I got tricked into assuming because it's Shane McMahon we're going to get something a bit crazier than what we actually got. My initial thought was, a couple of years ago when Braun basically did a choke slam off the top to Kevin Owens through the announce table. I thought we were going to get that. Then as he was on the top and he threw Shane off, while he was in midair, I thought Shane was going to go through the ring. And I thought, I suppose at WrestleMania, they're probably not going to do that. And then he just hit the floor, picked him up, slammed him one. And I was like, obviously, I'm sure it hurt, but by Shane's standards, it was a bit tame. But yeah, I agree with Ali. A terrible build, right? Very simple message behind it. Don't be a dick. Don't be a bully. Don't call someone stupid or whatever. But yeah, it was.
I feel like the messaging is if you have to be some bully to even bully Braun Strowman. Like, the guy's an absolute unit and could kill you. And it doesn't suit Braun. I don't think that role suited Braun very well.
Underdog baby face. And also, at no point in the build-up did Elias and Jackson Riker ever really hold Braun down while Shane would beat him up or whatever. Shane legitimately took him out in that time where he got slimed, he put him through the table, he got slimed and all that kind of stuff. Like, Shane just did that. Like, this fucking 50-year-old Shane McMahon part-time wrestler just took out Braun Strowman. Like,
I mean, he did hit him with a camera to do it, but...
Yeah, but I mean, it's all's fair in hopscotch and slime, right?
That's the saying.
Hopscotch.
Hopscotch.
But yeah, it's a bit of a shame. But yeah, decent match overall. What ended up being something that a lot of people are saying is the best celebrity match ever is Bad Bunny and Damian Priest defeating The Miz and John Morrison. Now, Matt, you haven't actually seen this match, have you?
No, I couldn't bring myself to watch it.
Was that before? Did you make that decision before or after the Bunnies came down to the ring?
Before, because I watched the build-up and I was just like, I obviously haven't watched Raw or SmackDown for a very long time. So you're hoping, if you haven't, that the promo before it will be like, right, this will get me into it. This will make me really want to see this match. And I was just like, nope. Fast forward this shit.
Well, speaking of the promos, I thought all throughout the weekend, some of the pre-match promos for the important WrestleMania matches were some of the best stuff they've done in a long time. And this one in particular made me realize, like, throughout watching Raw week to week and stuff, there's a few kind of interactions here and there. But this one made me realize how much they'd actually done and built the story across various different episodes of Raw. And
just to cut you off there, I think that's one of the things that surprised me was that. So Frankie asked how long Bad Bunny's been on TV, and I was like, well, he was at the Royal Rumble, and actually he's been on Raw pretty much every single week since then, doing something.
Triple H said in an interview a couple of weeks ago that I think the day after the Rumble, I think the day before the Rumble, he rented a house in Florida somewhere, in Tampa, I think it was. Rented a house and has been at the Performance Center every day since. Which typically for a celebrity match, I'm not interested. I don't care. I know the celebrity's going to come in and they're just they tend to waltz over a current active wrestler who's supposed to be one of the best in the world and make them look a bit shit. And I always think like that wouldn't happen in boxing. I'm like a random celebrity, an actor's not going to come in after a month of training and beat Anthony Joshua. It doesn't happen. So I usually don't care, but I was intrigued about this one because I knew how much of a fan he was and apparently how much work he's got put into it, and also because of how famous he is now. I suppose for people like us who maybe aren't in his demographic, it doesn't really resonate that much. But he was the most streamed artist in Spotify in the whole of 2020, and that with over like 1 billion listens, and he's got like something like over 30 million followers on Instagram and stuff like that. And he's posting. I had a look yesterday. He was regularly posting clips of his time in WWE, like clips from Raw and stuff like that. So getting a lot. I'm sure he would have got a lot of people watching.
I'd never heard him.
I'd heard of him, but I'd not listened to any of his music before.
I was the same. I'd be like, Royal Rumble was sort of like, oh, this is not my style of music, but I get it's probably popular now because I'm not in touch with modern music. I've reached that age. And it's like, whatever. And then WWE started to really hammer home how big a deal it is, which they're perfectly entitled to do. And then it starts creeping into other parts of your life. You start hearing other people start talking about him in other things and how popular he is. And you look on social media and see how many people interact with him. And you start to understand, actually, this is a really big deal. Even though, as you said, we're not his actual demographic, I don't think. Even I was aware after a few weeks that this is a really, really big get for WWE. And too right, are they going to milk it for all it's worth?
Yeah, it brings eyes to the product that probably wouldn't have been watching otherwise.
Yeah, so I think they've handled Bad Bunny's time there really well. I actually tweeted out as well, I think just before Mania, about how I feel like at the moment WWE is a bit more in touch with current pop culture than they have been in previous years. Not just specifically because of Bad Bunny, but also they'd striked up some kind of relationship, even if it's only short-lived, with Logan Paul, who is also a massive star, at least in America. A lot of people don't like him, but that also works for a WWE program where he could be a dick heel, for example. But But also, it just seems that with a lot of the roster, I guess perhaps being perhaps the average age is a bit younger than it has been in previous years. But it just seems that the superstars themselves are allowed to portray these kind of bit more kind of, I don't know, everyday people who are more in touch with pop culture rather than these characters that exist outside of the real world. I'm not sure, but to me it seems that way anyway. So yeah, Bad Bunny had a very impressive debut. I don't know about you, but 99% of what I've seen on the internet have been raving about the match. Matt, it was the reason why you didn't watch it just because you're not interested in the build-up with a celebrity, or was there anything particularly that turned you off?
I just don't like celebrity matches. And like, if I'm going to go back and watch a WrestleMania, you're going to skip that match. It's not going to give me anything that I want to see. And I get that it's bringing eyes to the product, but I don't care after it.
I agree with that. I think if you were ever to re-watch a WrestleMania for whatever reason, you're not going to go back to a celebrity match because, you know, once WrestleMania is done, the celebrity's gone, right? So like, it doesn't mean anything after. I think what you missed actually was a lifelong WWE fan who happens to be a massive celebrity now, essentially living his dream. And I think that was quite a cool thing to see.
It was evident as well. It was very clear. But a lot of people would say, "Oh yeah, you know, I watched it growing up and stuff." But he was like, you could tell, and it's been part of his character before his time in WWE. A lot. You see him out in public, and he's got wrestling like merch. He's got a Kane-inspired outfit. I don't know if you've seen it, which is very cool.
He wrote a song about Booker T.
Yeah, exactly. So I think in terms of how celebrity matches go, this one felt the least like a celebrity match in terms of actual match content. Bad Bunny surprisingly spent 75% of the match in the ring, rather than him getting the hot tag. It was him actually building up to get the tag to Damian Priest. I mean, he did a dive off the top rope to the floor. He did a Canadian Destroyer to the floor. His offense looked good. He didn't like. There was a few kind of, I guess, Shane McMahon type punches, but it's to be expected, I guess, when you're not a seasoned professional wrestler. You just go throw some punches. But yeah, overall, I was. Yeah, there was a couple moments where you could tell that, like, there was the inexperienced signs, and kind of sometimes he was not quite in the right position, so they had to adjust him and stuff like that. But and you could tell, obviously, Miz especially was walking him through the match a lot verbally. But yeah, I think it went about as well as it could have possibly done. The crowd were massively into it all the way from entrance to exit. And I just thought it was really good. And what I did like, how you mentioned, Ali, about how normally the celebrity comes in and they disappear after WrestleMania. I at least liked that on Sunday we got that little video like advertising his tour, basically, where Triple H says, "You did great, now go do your thing." At least it gives an explanation as to why we're not seeing him in the immediate future.
Yeah.
We may see him down the line. But like, it kind of leaves the door open.
I think I was really happy that the fans didn't shit on it. Because I think, yeah, I know. But I think that really added to it, because when you get those awkward celebrity ones where they're supposed to be a big deal and everybody hates them, but they're not supposed to, that's always a bad thing. But I think everyone just got caught up with it. It's just like, oh, this guy's a fan like me and you. Yeah, he's massively famous, but he's just living his dream, and we can live vicariously through that. Some people might look at that like, oh, he gets to do it and I don't. But like, everybody understands why. It works for him and it works for WWE. And I think it was just really cool that the fans bought into it. I think he's obviously massive deal amongst the Latin population.
Yeah, I think a Florida crowd helped as well.
Yeah, there's probably a large proportion of those in Florida. So I think that really helped. And the match, he put in so much effort over the last 2-3 months, and the match was a great blow-off for it. What I would say is massive kudos for Miz and Morrison. Firstly, Miz is always willing to embarrass himself. for the benefit of WWE. He even did it on Raw again. And Morrison is such a great wrestler that he can make anybody look good. Credit to Damian Priest as well, because for someone who's relatively green, especially at this level, he was a really good foil for Bad Bunny. He was sort of a really good, not mentor, because he didn't have to do a lot of mentoring. He didn't really have to do much in the match either. But
he was coaching him throughout the match, like on the side, where he was now throw him in the corner and do this and stuff. And I think they've got quite big hopes and expectations for Damian Priest, and I do as well. I really like him. And yeah, I'll be interested to see where he goes now without the Bad Bunny association on TV.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you say, Miz and Morrison
Probably
were
won't
great.
be on TV for about 4 months.
He was on Raw.
But he was in a handicap match against Miz and Morrison.
Yeah, Miz. So they wrestled in suits and stuff because they weren't ready for the match, and Miz got pantsed. His trousers got pulled off, so he was just in his pants, and Maurice was like hiding him and stuff, and Miz was trying to hide. I was like, "You wrestle in pants every fucking week. What's the difference?" His boxers were longer than his wrestling trunks. Like,
It wasn't even in boxes. He was in like brief when he was in pants.
It just didn't make sense to me as to why that's so embarrassing. Oh, my camera's gone. Has it fixed itself?
No,
no, it's not flickering so much, so that's a win. But yeah, as it was a win for Bad Bunny and Damian Priest. Now we move on to the main event. For the first time in history, in WrestleMania history anyway, 2 black women main event WrestleMania. We got 2 women in a singles match as the main event, 2 black women in the main event. Overall, a resounding success. Crowd response, match quality, end result. I think everything was great. Don't know about you.
Absolutely brilliant. I think they got this so spot on that it's very WWE are very hit and miss for their main events, WrestleMania main events specifically. That I think it was so refreshing to see it just go exactly how it should have done, rather than any sort of weird.
Don't overcomplicate it.
Yeah, don't overcomplicate it. You built Bianca up as a babyface, like before Royal Rumble, going against Bayley, after Royal Rumble, having won it. You've built her up all this time. Don't squander it. You've built a star. Now take it to the next level. Have her win. It would have been easy for them to have Sasha win, because you can use the excuse that Bianca's bit green, bit inexperienced, and she'll have her time later down the line. But why waste all of that momentum? And it's like finally, for once, they actually just went with the easy decision and the right decision. And you can see how much it meant to both of them as well, which I think really added to the match, actually.
Yeah, Matt, what did you make of the whole package?
I loved it, and I'm not a Sasha Banks fan. You know that I've had my issues with her, but I'll tell you what, they smashed it out of the park. And do you know what I really loved? The beginning bit where Bianca Belair started to cry. She really feels this, and this is her moment. And she did not disappoint.
Sorry, Matt. Just turn my laptop charger on.
Yeah, no, you're right, Matt.
For 2 hours and it's not been charging.
She was getting emotional at the start. I mean, as was Sasha, but you could tell how much it meant.
Sasha was a bit more composed. She was able to kind of hold it in, but you could tell in her face that she was feeling it too. But yeah, I was happy to see it.
They should do that more, I think.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah,
I think it does mean something to these people, to be in the main event.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. There's human beings behind the characters, and it was their moment from a personal perspective, but also they were both very aware and had talked a lot about the fact that they were representing black women or black people in general. I think with the exception of Roman Reigns, Bianca Belair and Sasha Banks are probably the 2 most well-positioned superstars that WWE have to transition into the mainstream. I think Sasha Banks especially, they could easily push to... They will say Charlotte Flair, but I think Sasha especially, they could make the face of their women's division and just have her as I don't know, but just try and make them and make her their Stone Cold or Rock or John Cena, for example.
I think she's halfway there, if not 3/4 of the way there. I think Sasha fans are probably some of the most intense fans you'll ever meet as well. So I think that helps. But yeah, Bianca as well. She's got such a great sort of appeal to her because she's very, very much like a bit of a baby dog, a babyface underdog. But she's not an underdog because she's so athletically gifted. But it's almost like she doesn't. It's like she doesn't realize how athletic and gifted she is, even though she goes on about it in her, all the time. But like in wrestling, it's sort of like this is still quite new to her, and it's great to go along on that journey with her. So I think she's got quite a lot of mainstream appeal.
I read a few tweets that said they were really disappointed with the ending of this because she used her hair. I'm like, have you not seen her before? Like, have you not seen any NXT matches she's ever done?
Yeah, well, this was the first time she used it on the main roster. Because I remember I tweeted during Survivor Series, why don't they let her use it anymore? It's such a good thing that she used to do. Makes more sense as a heel. But yeah, I didn't know why they wouldn't let her. But then having not seen it in well over a year at this point, for her to not only bust it out, but bust it out in the immediate build up to the finish. Like she hit it and then 10 seconds later the match was over. It made people who'd seen it before remember how loud and brutal it can be. And for people who've not seen it before, you go, holy fucking shit, like that's so smart. Like when I tweeted it out at the time, I said, why don't they let her use it? And someone responded saying it's an illegal move. I was like, but it's a part of you. Like a clothesline isn't illegal. And it was like, but it's not a part of your body. It's like an accessory. It's like you can't use a boot. But it's like, but you could use a boot if it's attached to your foot. Like it might be a grey area for some, but for me, I think it's a thing that she should bust out like at the most important of times.
I mean, if Sasha was I don't really get what Sasha's character is, whether she's face or heel. I think that she's playing the tweener role because Bianca's a face. But like, if Sasha wants to go full on heel, she could use that part to further the story,
Yeah, she's not allowed to have that hairpiece on when we wrestle next.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that could work. But yeah, like I was saying about my earlier point with these two women, especially, I think are very much they feel in touch with a lot of the current the younger demographic and a lot of pop culture and stuff. So I feel like WWE should do all they can to push these two women specifically into the mainstream. Don't force it down our throats. Don't tell us to like them.
And don't do it every week and then do it as a pay-per-view and then do it every week and then do another pay-per-view. We don't want to see it every week.
Yeah, we don't have to see them against each other all the time either, but just have these two women as to the public. These are our people. You should watch the show because of these people. And I don't see many people, especially in the women's division, who would be better equipped. So that was night one, which I think overall is the general consensus is it was better. It was the better night. Would you agree with that statement? Do you have any disputes?
I think I would agree. I don't think it's as clear cut as a lot of people have made out. Like that night two was bad and night one was really good. I think they were both
equally as good as each other.
I think they were both good. I think maybe night one probably just edged it, probably because it was the first night and it was a bit more exciting to have the fans for the first time. I don't know about you guys, but like by the end of the show, I just kind of fully got used to the crowd again. So it's like night two is sort of like it's not as much of a novelty anymore, so it didn't add as much to it. But I would say night one was probably slightly better than night two, but they were both good.
Yeah, I would agree. There wasn't a massive difference between the two, in my opinion. But night one just had a bit more of that energy about it that always helps with a show when it has kind of that sense of urgency in a way and unpredictability. Overall, I would say night one was better. But night two started off with Randy Orton versus The Fiend.
Probably the less said about this, the better.
I was surprised this opened the show. to be honest. I don't know why. I just felt like it would go on kind of second last, maybe. But yeah, we started the show. It was only a couple minutes long. But what do we make of what actually happened when it comes to Alexa Bliss's involvement in this?
Well, I think a lot of people misunderstood it at the time.
Yeah.
Because my understanding was that she cost Bray the match, whereas other people were sort of like, oh, she was just using it as a sign of power, and Bray got distracted by it accidentally. But from my position where I was viewing it from, it felt a lot like she cost him the match on purpose.
Yeah,
that's all I took away from it. That okay, Bray and Alexa aren't together anymore.
Yeah, my initial thought, especially if I'm watching it on the replay, was I thought that Alexa was basically going to come out and say, "I'm the captain now." Like she's going to control him in a way. They'd still be together, but she would control him, and her effectively making him lose was her way of saying, "I've actually been in control all along." What we actually ended up getting on Raw was basically her saying, I didn't need the Fiend overall in the end. Like I've always had this darkness in me. I don't need him anymore. I'm gonna fuck shit up. But it's a bit of a shame because I think it's been good for both of them to have them together, and it'll be interesting. This won't be the end of it. It's not just going to be cut off now all of a sudden. I think there will be some kind of overlap in the next coming months. What do we think? Are we disappointed with how it turned out?
I mean, as a spectacle, it was really good. It was cool. I think the shot of the Fiend sort of rising up from hell and walking through the flames to like change his attire back to his old one was pretty cool. Very unrealistic, but hey, you suspend your disbelief when it comes to the Fiend and Randy Orton storyline. But and then the big jacket, the big box-like structure.
I hated that you said that. But face first into the box-like structure. Fuck off, Michael Cole.
I mean, that was a pretty cool visual to kick off the show. And overall, I mean, the red light was back. I bet people hated that. I thought it was all right. But yeah, just from a match point of view, I think it got them to where they wanted to be, which was the storyline with Bray and Alexa. Randy was kind of just a byproduct, which feels a little bit of a shame given how intense the rivalry's been.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
But it had built up to something, and then sort of let me down in the end.
I feel like a lot more would have been made of this match if there was no live crowd, and they could have maybe done a pre-recorded thing.
Yeah.
They could have done a real fire fest and all of this shit going on. But yeah, the moment you have like a live crowd back, you can't do that in the terms of in a wrestling arena. You could do it so it's outside of wrestling, but you can pretend like they do in the Thunderdome that this thing they recorded earlier is actually happening right now. So yeah, it was a bit.
Ask, how long do you think the Fiend can go on for?
I think he's got to be smart and change it up a little bit. I don't know if with Alexa sort of turning on him, so to speak, I don't know if I'm getting Kane vibes, when he sort of fell in love with Tori and people started turning their back on him and he became a lot more vulnerable. I don't know if we're already there with the Fiend. I don't think we've had enough dominance from him to get to that stage yet.
Yeah, is he just becoming a man with a mask rather than a monster?
Yeah.
But I think he needs to have a really good, because for the most part his programs are pretty decent, but I think he needs to have a really good standout match and main event, for example, because for the most part as the Fiend character, the matches have been quite disappointing. I think they don't tend.
Daniel Bryan one, I think. Other than that, cool.
They don't go very long, which you don't always need for a monster character or whatever. But when you're facing the likes of Randy Orton and to get beaten by perhaps one RKO, when we saw it took 11 stomps from Seth Rollins, for example, it was just a bit fell a bit flat. And yeah, I think he needs his next 6 months to a year in this character could be quite vital for the longevity of the Fiend, or whether he goes back to Bray Wyatt.
100%.
So yeah, bit of a shame in that it was a cool start, but also relatively flat in terms of the match in the end. The crowd, when they just disappeared, crowd were like, fuck, like, is that it? And they were quite unhappy about it. They were, what I found, were surprisingly up for the Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler defending their titles tag team titles against Natalya and Tamina. Especially because in the build-up, in the months leading up to WrestleMania, Natalya and Tamina had been heels. And they went into this match as the faces, and the crowd kind of reacted to it in a way, which more than I expected them to, because it's Natalya and Tamina no one cares about. But in the end, another 14-minute match for the women's tag team division, and it was, yeah.
It was alright. This was better than the tag team tournament match. You got what you wanted. What you were going to get out of this. A bit like Drew and Bobby. Like, that was a better match. But like, what more do you expect, really? I think right decision to have Nia and Shayna retain. I don't think it's Tamina in that time. I don't think it ever will be. So, I mean, there's not much more you can say.
It does make me laugh. Natalya saying we need to stop living off our family name, and then the three biggest spots of the match were the sharpshooter, the heart attack, and the splash. Really, you want to maybe stop doing them then instead? But yeah, they didn't win. I think if they were to, if they take the titles off Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler, in my opinion, that has to be the end of that team, and Shayna Baszler should go off towards the Raw tag team, the Raw Women's Championship. They shouldn't go back and try and fight for those titles again, because it didn't seem like they didn't want to be a team in the first place. They still don't seem 100% coherent with each other, or cohesive rather.
It annoys me because I feel like a little bit like they've watered down Shayna Baszler.
Massively. She doesn't feel as tough anymore.
Yeah.
Well, I thought that with Charlotte's absence, in that short period where Charlotte went away immediately after Shayna kicked Asuka's teeth out, and when Asuka came back 2 or 3 weeks later and beat the shit out of Shayna, I thought, this is where we're going for Mania. This would be cool. Because there was a bit of mystery around Charlotte at the time. Did she have COVID? Was she leaving? Was there something going on with Andrade? All that kind of stuff. And it didn't seem like she was going to be at WrestleMania. So I thought that would be where we were going to go, and it would be better than what we got at Elimination Chamber last year, where Shayna beat everyone in 2 minutes and no one really cared. But I think she still has the ability to easily switch on the kind of killer Shayna that we were seeing before, that we saw mainly in NXT, to escalate herself towards perhaps Rhea Ripley after WrestleMania Backlash. But yeah, I don't know. It was a bit. It's a shame with Shayna, but I guess it was expected, really, because it's just what happens with NXT call-ups.
Yeah, true.
Yep.
I think it was a little bit criminal that this match went longer than most of the other matches on the card. In fact, I think it was the second longest match of the night, and probably the fourth or fifth longest match of the whole weekend.
It's the second longest match of the night. It went 5 whole minutes longer than Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens,
which is criminal.
Yeah, from a wrestling fan's perspective, if you give 100 fans the option of which match they want to go longer, 95% of them are going to say Kevin Owens and Sami.
Only 95.
Well, those other 5 will be Nia Jax, Shayna Baszler, Natalya, Tamina, and Tyson Kidd. Yes, even with somewhat of a Logan Paul involvement, which very much you could tell was agreed and arranged not long ahead of Mania, and there wasn't really a real plan other than just hey, look, there's a big superstar here. Let's everyone watch.
To be honest, that's going back to what they used to do in the day. There was no build-up. With WrestleMania, just had celebrities just turning up, didn't it? And some of them would be ring announcers, some of them would be commentators, some of them would be backstage sort of interviewers and that kind of thing. So in that way, it's a lot better than it used to be.
Some of them would be Pamela Anderson and have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think for the most part, he was only on one episode of SmackDown. He had a pre-taped segment with Sami Zayn the following week, and then he was at WrestleMania. So, but for the most part, he's done quite well. The attention hasn't been on Logan Paul; it's still been on Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. It's been on Sami Zayn's attempt at a relationship with Logan, and he played his part quite well. For the short time that he's been there, we didn't need to cut the camera to him every 10 seconds like we were getting in the match. Some of his reactions were a bit weird, but yeah, overall I wasn't too displeased with Logan there. But what did we think of the match itself?
In my eyes, I put this match. Sorry, Matt, you go.
Go on, no, go on.
I was just going to say, in my eyes, I put this match very much in the same camp as the Cesaro Seth Rollins one, where it's sort of like we know that they can do so much more and go so much longer and have such a great match that it just feel a little shortchanged when you get what you've got. Having said that, perfectly fine match. It was good. It was one of the better matches of the whole weekend. It's like, okay, could have gone twice the length, done so much more.
You put these two in the ring, it's going to be magic, even if it's 2 minutes.
Yeah,
it was about as good of a 9-minute match as you're going to get from a WWE product mid WrestleMania. It could have always gone 5 minutes longer, give them a bit more time to maybe slow things down a bit and tell a bit more of a story, because it was very much kind of go. But I think right result in the end, with Kevin winning, and then also Kevin giving a stunner to Logan Paul, because who doesn't want to see that? And I think this further adds fuel to Sami Zayn's conspiracy fire, and I'm interested to see where he's going to go next. Because I'm sure now he's going to go even further off the deep end.
Just feels WWE has massively missed the mark on both of them. Like, they both could be like the faces of the company, but they just won't do it.
I think they've done good.
Pull the trigger.
I think they've done good work with both of them at separate times. And
never at
the same time, but also never for a real prolonged period of time. I feel like that Kevin's feud with Roman over the winter, if fans were there, I feel like they would have been going nuts for Kevin. We would have been getting some mental reactions, especially in that TLC match that they had. But yeah, they've done good things at good times with them. But yeah, it's never been the consistent, like, these are our guys push. I don't think we'll ever get that with Sami, personally. And Kevin, he has quite big backstage pull. I'm hearing a story once. Apparently, Vince takes his opinion quite highly, which I find is quite interesting, because I wouldn't have necessarily thought that was the case.
I think he needs to run as champion. I really do.
Yeah. He needs a second one where he is the main focus. When he was Universal Champion, he had him and Chris Jericho, they were the most entertaining thing on Raw every week. But it was never like Kevin could go out and do it himself, which is fine as a heel champion. But there were some times when you just think, like, have this guy, like, just let him go with it, really. I'm not sure what they do with Kevin next.
Let him cut his own promos as well, because he's so much better when he's just literally off the cuff.
Yeah, these two in general, I think I tweeted a couple of weeks ago, I think are the two best natural talkers in WWE. That doesn't necessarily mean they're the best promo guys, which they might well be, but just I never hear a promo from either of these two and think, oh, that was really scripted. It always comes across very natural, which I don't know if it's kind of maybe a Canadian thing, or I find a lot of the independent guys are very good at their promos. Like Adam Cole, for example, is very similar.
Yeah, I think they have to be from where they've come from. I think it's the Ring of Honor thing. Like, you have to be good on a promo, because basically the fans will shit on you if you're not.
Yeah, Yeah, so doesn't surprise me that those two they're just so kind of fluid and natural with their promos. But yeah, I'll be interested to see where they go next. Kevin Owens, I think, won't go after Roman Reigns again, but potentially maybe.
Are we due a superstar shake-up?
Well, the last draft was only, well, I think it was October or something. November, I think, start of November, because it was just before Survivor Series. And then 3 weeks later, everyone was like, "Oh, I love the brand I'm currently on." Like, you don't.
I feel Kevin Owens could do a lot on Raw.
Yeah, we always say someone could do a lot on Raw, and then they never get to fucking do it. Raw's just a bit of a weird one, but maybe a feud with someone like Apollo Crews in a couple of months down the line for the Intercontinental title. But yeah, I don't see him going for world titles anytime soon.
It's just a shame how talented he is.
Yeah, but yeah, it's a shame. But we had just seen it with him and Roman. It's not like we've got a new champion for him to face either. So that's why I'd say we wouldn't see him there. Speaking of new champions, then Sheamus captured the United States Championship from Riddle in what I thought was a pretty good match. These two had a very good match on Raw a couple of weeks back, where Sheamus actually beat him just straight up. And they did it again here with a brutal mid-air backflip bro kick, which fucked Riddle's mouth up a bit. I thought it was very good. Sheamus lately has been on a massive roll in this last year.
Yeah, I think this is probably just deserves for Sheamus for all the work he's put in over the pandemic sort of era. I think this was probably surprising how good it was. I don't know why it was surprising, to be honest, because Riddle's great in the ring and Sheamus is such a good hand. But I don't find myself wanting to watch a lot of Riddle versus Sheamus or Sheamus matches in general. I just find them slightly more boring.
It's not one of the ones you go, "Oh, I'm really looking forward to this one." You sort of this would be one you sort of think, "I'll switch off a little bit here."
Yeah,
he's the one where you don't necessarily look forward to a Sheamus match, but after a Sheamus match, sometimes you go, "Oh, that was really good, actually." Like for example, his match at Fastlane with Drew McIntyre, no disqualification or whatever it was, all around the arena, was actually really, really good. And going into it, I thought, yeah, it'll be all right. It's going to be hard hitting and stuff. But in the end, it was a lot better than I thought. And that's been the case with a lot of his matches over the last 6 months. And yeah, like you say, I think is very well deserved. I'd like to see him maybe go on. I'm sure it won't happen, but every time someone wins the US Championship, everyone says, do the open challenges and have matches with the underutilized guys. But in Sheamus's position as the veteran that he is and stuff, I feel like it, and as a heel champion as well, I think it'd be interesting to have him do that against the likes of Ali, Ricochet, Cedric Alexander, Angel Garza, Drew Gulak. I think it can't hurt anyone apart from him actually hurting people.
Yeah, I mean, that's always. I struggle to see what else they can do with Sheamus as US champion other than give it straight back to Riddle. So, yeah, I think that would be the best route to go down. I mean, I want to see less sort of Sheamus versus other veterans that we've been seeing over the last year. Jeff Hardy, for instance. I'd like to see, as you say, the Ricochets, the Alis, probably some of the Angel Garza, who I think is
just something we've not seen.
Great. Yeah.
It feels like WWE are very much recycling a lot of old shit.
That's one of my biggest issues with WWE at the moment. Is I say this all the time. You can guarantee after every single pay-per-view there will be at least one rematch on the Raw or SmackDown immediately after. And then it goes on for a bit, and it's like, why? We literally saw it the night before. But this time on Raw, we've got Asuka versus Rhea Ripley for the Raw Women's title for no reason. Like, why? I know it's the Raw after Mania, and they might want to make it seem more important, but it's not like Rhea cheated to win and Asuka's pissed off. It's not like they said let's have this match at Backlash or whatever. They just had a match on Raw.
And you can assume you'll get it at Backlash as well.
Yeah. Or at least the triple threat variation now involving Charlotte.
Well, yeah.
So, another one of those things that WWE does that pisses me off. But this match did not piss me off. Let's just say that. How many? I don't know about you, but how many Nigerian drum fights have you guys been in?
A few. I was in one the other week. Lots of drumming. Not a lot of fighting.
Well, I'll have you know, back in the day, none. Absolutely none. Never heard of it before.
Has anyone? That was my follow-up question. Has anyone ever heard of a Nigerian drum fight before? Because Apollo Crews made this challenge on, I think it was the last episode of SmackDown before WrestleMania. I don't think it was the one before.
It might have been the one before last. Just given that the one was a couple of days before.
But at no point between him making the challenge and the match starting was there any explanation as to what it is. It's just a no disqualification match with a bunch of bongos at the side. That was it.
Yeah, just drums at the side.
Yeah. I think there was one crash symbol used, and that was about it.
But at no point do I think a drum was used.
It was an okay match in the end. I think by this point the crowd were maybe starting to get a bit the flagging a bit. Kind of perhaps waiting for the main event, I think, is probably the issue here, is the main event that everyone wanted to see. Got a live performance from Wale here, which I always think I struggle with live performances at wrestling, but especially at WrestleManias.
I forgot how obviously fake this was.
yeah, it was very, very lip synced. It was just live performances at WrestleMania. Like, the crowds are never into them. And it's not like, for example, I know him and Big E and Wale are friends and stuff, and Wale does his theme music and whatever. But from my perspective, I wouldn't say that Big E's theme music is the most well-known theme music that everybody knows and people could potentially kind of sing along to or something, for example.
I think there was a bit of a difference between this and Rhea Ripley's entrance.
Yeah, and ones in the past, like Triple H and Motorhead and stuff, but it was like, he's a main eventer with a real song that you associate with the character. For Big E's one, all I know is the little bit at the start, and that's it. I couldn't tell you the rest of it. So yeah, those kind of performances, I always find they fall flat. Nobody really cares. They tend to go on a bit too long. But yeah, match was quite short in the end, 6 minutes 50. It was the second shortest of the night. But we got a new Intercontinental Champion out of it, with Apollo Crews now teaming up with, I think, Babatunde. No, not Babatunde. What's his? Dabba-Kato from Raw Underground. Now that Omos has stopped guarding the door, they're all getting out now.
So yeah, just a bit. I don't know if you've seen the rumors on that, but although we've seen him many times on Raw, and specifically Raw Underground, they acted like they didn't know who he was. His new gimmick is going to be either Commodore Aziz or just Aziz, who is going to obviously be part of Apollo Crews' gang, I guess. Nigerian gang. Even though his actual nationality is Polish.
What, Apollo Crews?
Have a fake. Is he going to have a fake accent? Because I can't be dealing with this every week.
Hopefully not.
I think he has some kind of accent. I think I've heard him speak before, but yeah, it was a bit like, at WrestleMania you don't tend to get those kind of finishes a lot. Those are more reserved for the Raws and pay-per-views and stuff that isn't the real big stage. So it was a bit strange, but I'm fine with seeing Apollo as have a heater, basically. And this is a question that literally just come to mind. Do we think this potentially means any kind of summer program for the Universal Championship for Big E?
Hope so.
Something different?
I think that he has to obviously finish this program, and if you're going to be the babyface in an Intercontinental title program, having just lost it, you would think the climax of him for that program would be him winning it back, which then kind of takes him out of the picture for the Universal title. But maybe not. Maybe he just moves on.
Yeah, well, we've seen it in the past where they lose the mid-card title and then go straight to the the main title,
Riddle.
even though they lost the match. But yeah, same thing happened on Raw. Riddle lost the US title and went, all right, well, I want to fight Bobby Lashley then.
He got absolutely destroyed, but
Yeah. Matt, I don't know if you know, by the way, but there's a new commentator on Raw now.
Yeah, I've heard it's not great.
They've replaced Tom Phillips. I'll be honest. I've seen a lot of people kind of shitting on him and stuff. So he's an ESPN guy, I believe.
baseball commentator.
Yeah. And I found it kind of refreshing in that he wasn't just your Tom Phillips, your Michael Cole, your Vic Josephs, like that kind of robotic. They all say the same things, really. They just have different voices. You could tell, like, he was clued up on the product. Like, he seemed to be relatively knowledgeable. There were a couple of moments when there was at least twice in the night where he said, "Can someone tell me what's going on?" And I wouldn't be surprised if that was legit. And he produced my favorite moment of Raw, actually, where Shayna Baszler swung Nia Jax into a corner, and Corey Graves swung like a pendulum. And he went, like a pendulum, this match is only swinging in one direction. And there was about 2 seconds of silence, and Corey went, "That's literally the opposite of what pendulum does." And he was like, "Yeah, I realised it as I was saying it."
I did. You say he was clued up on the product, but he did think that Ivar was called Eric Ivar.
Eric Ivar, yeah.
Eric and Ivar. Which is,
yeah,
He said it multiple times, and it was like, well, do you know when commentators get something wrong, and the other commentators try to like clear it up for them by saying something, so like
without directly saying it to them.
Yeah, Corey was like, "Well, Ivar's on fire," and then Adnan was just like, "Yeah, Eric Ivar's doing great."
Eric tagging in Ivar here.
Yeah.
Eric Ivar with the tag. Yeah, like I'll give him time because I think it could have been a lot worse. And he's gonna have to be around for a while. So, but did you know since 2008, I think it is, this is the 22nd commentary team on Raw. 22nd different commentary team.
That's mad considering how long JR and King were there for.
Yeah, 22 different teams. Not even just like the same team appeared a couple of times. There's 22 different combinations of people. I couldn't even tell you most of them.
It's just weird. You get to the stage where you start liking a commentary team, they gel and they're doing really well, and then they're like, right, we're going to just change it now. It's like, I was just getting used to this, and it started working. And
yeah,
I don't understand whose cornflakes Tom Phillips is pissed in, but he always gets the short end of the stick.
I know. Like, I don't think it's the case that he's done anything wrong. I just think they went, "Oh, we can get a sports guy in here. That'll make us seem more cool or whatever." And Tom Phillips is the one that he replaces.
Perfect balance. NXT.
Yeah, I really like
their commentary.
I think Wade Barrett's a really good commentator, and now that she's back in the arenas, Beth Phoenix is doing some of the best stuff as well. I think from the main roster, their best commentary team would be, I find, Tom Phillips, Byron Saxton, surprisingly, and Corey Graves, because they're all similar age and they're all good. They all seem like good mates. They have quite a good relationship with each other.
It's the chemistry that does it, isn't it? And they all have really good chemistry with each other.
I'd include Samoa Joe, but I want to see him to wrestle. Michael Cole and Corey Graves as a duo only, I find them are actually quite good. I found that over WrestleMania, I don't know if anyone else really paid attention, but I found that over WrestleMania, Michael Cole did a lot of. He was annoying me less. I found like when he gets to just kind of focus on calling the matches, he's a lot better. And I don't know whether it's because he got to pair with someone like Samoa Joe a bit more. But with him being taken off Raw, it would indicate that maybe he's making an in-ring return. Hopefully.
That's the sort of shadow sort of thing. You get disappointed when you hope that.
Well, yeah, he'll be back on commentary. He'll be moved to SmackDown on commentary next week. So just move on. We've not got a lot of time left, but we'll cover these two as well, obviously. But a lot of people I saw were quite disappointed with the Raw Women's Championship match and the quality of it, which I didn't feel at the time was that bad of a match. Sorry. What did you think? Because a lot of people I thought didn't like it.
I think this suffered from not being as good as Rhea versus Charlotte, and I think you can sort of understand why. I think things people forget, and there's quite a lot of them. But Rhea Ripley's 24 years old.
She's younger than me.
She hasn't wrestled. She hasn't wrestled since January, apart from when she came back to Raw. So it's sort of give her a break. Like, she's gone into one of the sort of almost co-main events of WrestleMania, and it's a big stage. They made a big deal out of how big a stage this was going to be for her last year when they did all the promos in the stadium. And she's bound to make a few little mistakes, which I think both of them did, both in the WrestleMania match and on the one on Raw. Probably more so in the one on Raw. And it probably did fall a little flat. I got a little bored. It's fairly late on in the program, in the show, so it happens. I just think it was a victim of not being as good as last year's match for her, and also Asuka having almost no heat or momentum whatsoever.
And also not being as good as Bianca and Charlotte.
Yeah,
that's the immediate comparison you make. Really, is the other women's match on the show. Rhea's been quite open in talking about over the last year, since that last Mania appearance, her losing a lot of confidence in herself. So yeah, I agree with you in that she's 24 years old in the semi-main event of a massive WrestleMania, the first one in front of fans in over a year. Cut her a bit of slack, and she's only been. This is her first match with Asuka. She's only been on the main roster for a couple of months. Give her a bit more time to get bedded in and stuff. Obviously they've made her the champion, so now you expect good stuff. But she will deliver. I'm sure. She's too good not to.
She's way good not to deliver. I would say, strap the rocket. She is what you need.
Yeah, she's a cool, young, new face. She's been around a couple of times, but she's not oversaturated like Charlotte.
I guarantee you, put her up against Shayna, who she's already faced, and you'd have magic.
Yeah, have that as your SummerSlam feud. I think she has been portrayed so far as the heel, though, which is kind of interesting. They piped in the booze for her, so it's a conscious decision to have her as the heel.
And they piped in cheers for her on Raw.
Well, they piped in booze as well when she came out, though, I think.
No, actually, they didn't pipe them in. The fans were encouraged, on the videos, were encouraged to cheer for her.
It's very confusing.
It's all very mixed messages.
Because if she is to be the heel champion going forward, then who is her challenger?
Charlotte, I guess.
Or is she only the heel for Asuka? And now that she's done that, and she's won the title, and now Charlotte has come back as a heel. Don't know if you know that, Matt.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Is it now that she's now back to babyface? She just did that perhaps with Sasha, she just did a kind of temporary switch to divide the crowd.
Yeah, I mean, that happens.
Or unify the crowd.
She's a very good heel, so I wouldn't be surprised if she kept that persona. But she's not Charlotte Flair heel, so
yeah, she could do badass babyface, or she can do cocky, arrogant heel, who can also.
I think Charlotte's what she needs now, kind of thing. Charlotte will get her through it, I think.
Also,
as long as Charlotte just doesn't win the title.
Well, that's what I mean. It's what the story needs. It needs Rhea to go over Charlotte to sort of avenge last year's
redemption. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel it would be a triple threat at WrestleMania Backlash, and perhaps Asuka will eat the pin to kind of keep the conflict between Charlotte and Rhea going. So yeah, potential triple threat down the line. But the triple threat that we got to close out WrestleMania weekend was, in my opinion, a very, very good match. Best match of the night. Roman Reigns retaining the championship in a triple threat against Daniel Bryan and Edge. What do you think about the result, first and foremost?
I actually think right result. I think
100%.
This was I think this was another example where WWE could have gone down a couple of paths. I don't think Daniel Bryan was ever going to win this match. Edge winning, they may have gone down the whole 10th anniversary thing, and I think that I was a little bit worried that they would, because he doesn't need that. No, I don't think anyone really wants Edge to be champion either. I mean, you could feel like he might deserve it. You can feel like he's got a good claim to it, but I don't think anyone really wants Edge to be champion. So I think Roman was the only real viable option they had. And also, you don't want this sort of dominant streak to end.
Don't fix what's not broken.
Exactly.
Yeah, I would agree with you in that Roman retaining is the right decision. Yeah, Daniel Bryan was never going to win, and there were moments where I thought, well, they'll make Edge win as a feel-good ending to not only WrestleMania but the culmination of his comeback, and give him a couple months till SummerSlam, for example. I think a lot of people have been divided on the finish and the manner in which Roman Reigns won.
I didn't hate it. I thought it was quite original.
I don't remember. I don't recall seeing that really been done before. The kind of double pin. A few people were quite unhappy in the way it shifted from, as a babyface, Roman Reigns can beat Cena, he can beat Undertaker, he can beat Lesnar, he can beat anyone you put in front of him. But as a heel, he's like, Jay, please help me, Jay, please. But yeah. I don't hate it. Maybe as part of the WrestleMania main event. Yeah, to a certain extent. But he also backs it up without Jay usually in his matches. So yeah, it's a fine balance to strike. It's the kind of thing you don't tend to see a lot of kind of interference in WrestleMania main events, like with the Apollo Crews match earlier. But I feel like it just helped when you've got such two guys who are so popular as baby faces as Edge and Daniel Bryan. It really helps.
I was surprised we were allowed to see a concerto.
Yeah, there was that. I will admit there was a moment where I thought Edge was going to win when I think it was Reigns he hit the spear on, wasn't it? Was it? Yeah, Reigns, and then Daniel Bryan pulled the ref out of the ring.
Yeah, that was a good moment. I thought, all right, that's one of those times where they got it so spot on.
Yeah, and the crowd throughout this whole match, really, but those last 5 minutes or so, the crowd were well into it from what I could, what I can remember anyway, having not watched it back. But yeah, overall, I think this match really was a success. The program, although it's not been the longest program in terms of with all three of them involved, I think it's been one of the better built stories.
I like where they can go with this.
Yeah.
He literally can come out on SmackDown and be like, well, none of you are getting another title match because I've done with you now. I've beaten you both.
And Edge could go fully off the deep end and as a heel on Daniel Bryan. Yep. Be like, this is your fault. You cost me. Because Edge, I don't know if have you watched Edge's Chronicle that came out just before Mania?
No.
It's worth a watch. It's done from like early March, mid-March-ish, just before Fastlane, till the SmackDown before Mania. And he talks about how he's just so much more comfortable in this heel role. Basically, he didn't want to come back and just be like happy to be here, babyface Edge.
Babyface, yeah.
And yeah, how he just feels so much more at home. And when he was doing those promos, as he slowly degenerated into his kind of old ways, it just feels so much more comfortable and better for where he wants his character to be. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Edge turn heel on Daniel Bryan fully, and blame him for not being able to achieve his goal, basically.
He struggled to get people to boo him, that's the problem. And having said that, I thought he'd struggle to get people to boo Daniel Bryan, and they were booing him.
And if you're gonna get anyone to boo Edge, the best person to pair him with is against Daniel Bryan.
That's true.
So, yeah.
Overall, though, match-wise, though, I was very impressed. Not that I felt like this was going to be a bad match, because all three of them are really great. Like Roman's just off the scale at the moment, I think, with his performances. Mm-hmm. And Edge is
100%. And look at how much difference there is between now and all he did was turn heel, and
lose the
he's
test.
still as dominant.
Yeah, he took his shirt off.
Yeah.
Still as dominant, but people were like, oh yeah, I can get behind that.
But it's just exactly the role he should be in. You just look at him and you think, I hate that guy. Like, why would I like this guy? But
He's a real life fucking Aquaman.
Because he's stacked, he's dominant, he's good looking, he's arrogant, and it's like, well, I'm never going to like this guy. Yeah, he's rich. I'm never going to like this guy. So why try and make me like him?
Yeah, it's the promos that you cut in between the matches can be almost exactly the same, really, with a few kind of fighting from underneath differences. But it doesn't have to change his move setup or anything like that. It's the promos in between that make all of the difference. He doesn't have to be like, I'm doing this for you guys or whatever now. You can fully be like, I don't give a shit. I'm doing this to get money, to be top of, like, everyone respect me. You should all respect me. All that kind of stuff. And it's a lot easier. And people tend to say they tend to have a lot more fun as a heel than they do as a babyface, and you have more freedom. You can say and do a bit more. So yeah, I'm not surprised that Roman has been as successful as he has been in the last 6 months or however long it's been. So yeah, overall, speaking of success, I'd say WrestleMania 37 was success in the end. I think it would have been hard not to be with the crowd. I think there was, when you think about it, a relatively notable lack of star power, but I didn't really feel that by the end of it. When you think, this was the first time, I think, in something like, in about 30 years, but there was no Undertaker or Triple H.
Yep.
And you've not got John Cena, you've not got Becky Lynch, you didn't have Charlotte Flair. Bayley was there for a little bit, but she didn't really do much. Hulk Hogan, but they didn't do much. Like, there's a lot of people who could do something that weren't there. So overall, yeah, I think it was a very good showcase for the current crop of superstars, which is always what you want, because these are the people who are going to be there every week.
It's kind of what I was thinking. It was very much almost like a transitional WrestleMania, where it was sort of like, okay, this is what we're going with now. Like, either get on board or get off. It's like, these are the people, like the people who came out big from WrestleMania, the likes of Drew and Bobby and Roman and Cesaro, Big E and Apollo were featured, which is something that they probably wouldn't have been.
Bobby Lashley as a champion.
Yeah, it's like, those are the big, Damian Priest in a prominent role, and Sasha and Bianca, like, those are the future. Therefore, we featured them heavily, and they, most of them won, or at least put in great performances. And so, get on board with it, because we're not going back to being bailed out by, Kane,
Goldberg,
The Undertaker, and Shawn Michaels, and Goldberg specifically. So
yeah, those were the other two I mentioned. Brock Lesnar and Goldberg weren't there.
Well, yeah, I really hope that they keep it up, but I kind of feel like they won't. As soon as first sign of trouble, Brock will be back, or first sign of trouble, Goldberg will be back. They'll have Stone Cold out as soon as they can. It's those sorts of things. But for the time being, at least let's enjoy the ride, where they're kind of going. Right, it feels a little bit like, post the golden era into the new generation era. It feels like we've been there for a little while, but this felt like the rubber stamp on it to go, right, we're going with these guys. We don't need big name stars to come in and just do a part-time job for us anymore, because these guys can handle it.
I mean, I don't have a problem with, say, bringing in someone like Stone Cold for a show, or Shawn Michaels for an appearance or whatever. It's when they start wrestling. It's when you get the Goldbergs and stuff wrestling that I don't care, because you know that, yeah, you don't need it. You know that he's probably just going to win the title at the expense of a current guy. But yeah, I'm hopeful that this is potentially the start of a shift towards something a bit fresher, some new matches with the likes of Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley and Bianca Belair and a lot of stuff that we haven't seen. So we'll just have to see where it goes from there. That's it really, I guess, for our WrestleMania review. It's been quite a long one, but there was 2 nights of 4-hour pay-per-views to discuss, so it's to be expected really. But yeah, big success for Mania. Very happy just to see the fans back, even if it was just, it's not going to happen on a regular basis for a little while, I guess. There's not been any details from WWE anyway to confirm when that's going to be the regular. But it's every day it's getting closer, isn't it? So
just get back to some sort of normality. That would be great.
Yeah,
and then Matt might start watching Raw and SmackDown again.
I might. You're right. I might.
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying to work, saying to someone at work earlier that they were like, "Oh, this year's gone so fast. Doesn't it feel like the time's just moving so quickly?" I was like, "Yeah, but in the middle of a pandemic where you can't do anything, I'm more than happy for the fucking half a year just to go in a week, like just get us, because it means we're close to the end." And that's what this weekend kind of made me feel, was we're getting there. It's a visual representation rather than just numbers of people vaccinated, for example. So, yeah, very good stuff. So yeah, that's it for our WrestleMania review. Make sure to check us out on Twitter at _PWP. We didn't ever finish off part 2 of WrestleMania 35, our trip to New York. I don't know whether we will revisit that.
Let's do that next week.
Yeah.
We could do that next week. I never actually ended up posting any of the photos from of people we met that we were talking about. So yeah, we'll try and get them up, some of them up in a week. But yeah, next week we'll do WrestleMania part 2 unless anything urgent comes up.
Maybe we can do the return of the PWP randomizer.
That's what I was just about to say. The week after, I reckon we should do the randomizer. Give it another run out.
This really needs to hurry up because I really need to piss.
So yeah, I just want to take a minute here just to slow things down.
Well, I'm going to be going.
That's fine. Okay, so yes, thank you for listening. Make sure to check out all of our other episodes that we posted on our YouTube channel. Apologies if you do watch this one on YouTube for my camera being a dick, but it's the way things go. So yes, thanks for listening, and we will see you next week for WrestleMania 35 Part 2.
Bye.